Word of the day, dulcet. Dulcet is a formal word used to describe sounds that are pleasant to hear. It is often used in the phrase dulcet tones, like the sweet, sweet sounds of me and Steve Muma talking about the Buffalo Bills. My man, Steve, it's good to have you with me today, man. Like, we've been talking back and forth about doing this for a bit. Before I get too far into it, make sure you like, share, subscribe, smash those 5-star reviews, and show some love to Mac Brooks of the Mac Truck Podcast, Paul Wizzo of Wizzo Talk, and Nick Stevenson of the Houston Sports Stadium Podcast. Steve, we've been talking about doing this for a bit now, and I'm really, really glad that I have an even keeled, emotionally stable Bills fan on the podcast to talk Bills football. How are you doing today, bro?
I wouldn't say even keeled or emotionally stable all the time, but I'm good. Thank you for having me.
This team does make you feel certain emotional rages, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And once you add in the fact that I'm also a Met fan too, it kind of I like two cursed franchises, so.
But the Mets have a World Series though, at least, and in our lifetime.
Well, I was one when they won, so
well,
technically yes.
But that's fair. So before we get into everything, I've told the story. We have some new listeners, but my story becoming a Bills fan is I was born in Texas. I was watching highlights with my dad and my grandpa because the Oilers and Cowboys are obviously big there. But I saw Jim Kelly. He was playing. So I saw the last name Kelly. He wore number 12. I was born in May. My birthday is May 12th. So, and my first name is James. The stars aligned. I was a Jim Kelly fan initially. I wasn't a Bills fan. It just kind of cross-pollinated and, melted into that. How did you become a Bills fan from the get-go, though?
Well, I was born and raised in Rochester, New York, which is about an hour east of Buffalo. In the early 90s. So the Super Bowl era Bills is basically what I grew up on. The first game I ever went to was a 91 season opener against Dan Marino and the Dolphins. So that, from my recollection, that was a pretty good game to go to. Jim Kelly, Dan Marino.
Oh yeah.
It was a lot of fun watching that team at the time. Well, except for the last games of the year, obviously.
Yeah, those were hurtful. How many Bills games have you been to, do you think?
It's got to be about at least a dozen.
See, I envy you for being that close to the team that you love. Being in Alaska, I don't have the opportunity for anything.
Well, funny story is, for the 13-second game in Kansas City, the day before, the moment that I saw Cincinnati knock off the number 1 seed Titans, I went ahead and bought tickets for the AFC title game. So I had the tickets in my hand.
Oh, no.
And when Gabe Davis scored that touchdown.
You thought you were going.
Absolutely. I had end zone seats. I was yelling to myself, I'm going to the championship game. And then, as we all know how it turned out.
Dude, I was working from home that day. I almost quit my job. I was so furious.
That was rough. That really was. But
yeah, I've only been to one Bills game myself. This would have been probably, man, it would have been at least 15 years ago. It was, to put a timeline on it, when Willis McGahee used to play for the Bills, and then he played for the Ravens. That's the game that I saw. My dad had a business trip in Washington, D.C., so I went with him, and we stayed in Washington, D.C., but drove up to Buffalo for that home game. And you can only imagine the play on words of Willis's last name, where those jerseys went
absolutely.
for personalized.
Trust me, I've seen a lot, especially signs when Tom Brady came to town too. I can only imagine.
The best one is still Tom Brady sits when he pees. It's the best. It's the best sign I've ever seen in my entire life. Really, but I went live yesterday with a Tom Brady, or the other day with a Tom Brady shirt on, with the whole "nothing to see here, just a little bit of avocado tequila." Like, my hatred for Tom Brady has dissipated so much over the past 6 to 7 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, same. The moment he left New England, even when he was in Tampa, I ended up going to the Super Bowl that first year. I was rooting against him to get there, but you saw his true personality once he left New England. And he's a genuinely likable guy. It just stunk that he went 33-3 against the Bills, which that stat's absolutely absurd to me.
Yeah, it does it drives a dagger pretty deep. But we always have the Nate Clements hit though. Even though he popped right back up, we always got the Nate Clements hit. That dog had I had the GOAT hit, besides Pollard tearing his ACL, which to me doesn't really count. But Clement really rocked that dude's world, and we'll always have that in Bills history against Tom Brady.
We'll always have the 31-0 opening day game.
That too.
And the streak breaker in 2011. We were down 21-3, and then came all the way back and intercepted him 4 times. That to me was the game of the playoff drought.
It sucks because I know when you get in these really volatile and toxic sports groups, that if you bring that up, they're like, really, that was your Super Bowl? And we're like, yeah, kind of, you jerk. But we can laugh at it now though.
Oh, yeah, you really can. When you've never seen your team win a Super Bowl, or when you're in the middle of a playoff drought, yes, that is your Super Bowl at the moment. Because you're not – at the time, that made us 3-0, and we thought we had the real deal with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Then we gave him the contract, and all of a sudden we, go 1-8 the rest of the year?
I remember, what was your initial – I know we're going off on a tangent for a second, but what was your initial reaction when the Bills got T.O.?
Oh, I loved it. I thought for sure we were going to the playoffs.
He just had that aura about him, dude. It was wild.
Trent Edwards, I know he had the concussion in 2008.
Yep.
We were wondering if he was going to come back, but I thought that connection was going to be pretty good. And then, of course,
thought Trent Edwards was a good quarterback too.
I'm sorry?
I thought that Trent Edwards was a good. I'm not gonna gas Trent Edwards up to be anything close to even like the old Drew Bledsoe that we got. But I thought that Trent Edwards was a good quarterback, but it's like Buffalo for like that middle of the 2000s to the mid 2010s, those offenses were just absolute cheeks. It was you had one dude maybe at one position, and there was
You can even argue that those years they went 7-9, 3 years in a row, 6-10, they actually overachieved to hit those records.
There was they were so bad offensively, they had zero reason even winning 3 or 4 games. That was atrocious.
The perfect example was, when we won 3 games in a row in 2007, then we got flexed to Sunday night against, Tom Brady and the 18-1 Patriots. I had hope for that game up until a second offensive play. The first play they had like an 8-yard gain, and then all of a sudden JP got sacked, and then we had to punt.
Oh, JP Lothman. Oh my God, I forgot about him. He had great hair, but good Lord, he was terrible.
And then the first Patriot offense play went for like 20 yards, and boom, that was basically game over. 56-10 later.
To be fair, so wasn't it the same year that they put up like 900 infinity billion points on the Texans or on the Titans as well? I feel like that was the same year. I could be wrong. But there was a snow game and New England put up like...
No, that was 2009.
Was it 9? Okay.
That was the year after the Brady's knee injury, and he ended up having 5 touchdown passes in the first half.
And Moss just went ape on them.
Yeah.
So talking about the Bills, and we're reminiscing about the mediocrity of this franchise for so long. It's been so great catching up with us not being awesome. So this upcoming season, what do you consider the strengths of this Bills team? What do you consider to be the weakness? And the Stephon Diggs trade, plus or minus for you?
I may be going a little crazy here, but I honestly think it's going to end up being a good thing.
In the short term this season or long term?
Well, both. Because based from what I've seen in camp and what's been going on is especially with Joe Brady's offense, is they've been spreading the ball around to everybody. not just one person there. Whereas last year, during camp, they were talking about, Allen to Diggs, Allen to Diggs, Allen to Diggs. Where this year it's Allen to Keon Coleman, who has looked very good in camp here. He's made a couple of nice catches. He's beaten Rasul Douglas. He's beaten, he's beaten some other good cornerbacks out there. But I think this offense, they could be better than what people are expecting. So I know you've always said that we've always had a running game. We just haven't utilized it. Where last year when we won 6 games in a row, no, Josh didn't throw for 300 yards during that streak, but the passing game was still effective because they mixed in the pass and the run. Whereas, as you know, with Ken Dorsey's offense was very, very predictable.
It was, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because I did. I've been told forever that the Bills don't have a run game, and I've been saying they do. They just don't utilize it. That's so great to hear that from another Bills fan, to notice that you have it. You have it within you. You're just not using it. And the fact that your rushing stats, like per game, everybody wants to put all the love just for Josh Allen, where it's like if you didn't use him like a Minotaur and you use the other players that you got, because it's not they've had terrible running backs since he's been there. They just don't use them. They want him to be everything. And I've always come from the perspective of Buffalo has been starving for a quarterback since Jim Kelly. They want to force Josh Allen to be the next coming of quarterback Jesus for that franchise. And they wanted to put everything on him. When you saw Stephon Diggs, and we're getting a little off topic and we're going to talk more about it later on, but we saw what Josh Allen was before Stephon Diggs, and we saw him with him. Then we're going to see him now as a fully functioning quarterback with this much time in the league. Is it really you or was it him? Because having Diggs, even though he statistically was not great the back half of the year, just having the true threat of a number one dude makes everybody else better. And now you don't have that. So we're going to see exactly how great Josh Allen is. So what are your expectations for Josh Allen this year? You think he'll be good for, because I'm kind of with you. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road initially.
Yeah.
And that's completely understandable. It's a new offense. You got basically 3 new wide receivers. You're gonna stumble initially. And then the Josh Allen hatred is going to come to fruition, because it always does. Because if they start 2-5 or 1-3, and his statistics are terrible, it's going to be, see, he needed Diggs. But fans aren't going to allow that to grow until the entire season's over. And then you see that he's still going to throw for 4,000 yards. He's still going to have 30 touchdowns. He's still going to have 10 rushing touchdowns because he's Josh Allen.
And I also believe his interceptions are going to drop too. I believe part of that problem was, feeling the need to go to Diggs when he really needed it as well. Some of the interceptions last year were kind of like punts, but then there were some of those boneheaded interceptions, like in the Patriots game in Foxborough to open up the game, which was not a good decision on his part. But
and I think that's a very fair point, because a lot of people they'll just look at a box score, or they'll look at the end of the year stats. And to me, not all interceptions are created equal, right? Like you said, some are punts. If it's like 3rd and 19, you're like, whatever, just yeet it. And if it gets picked off at the 7, that's basically a punt. It's going to look like an interception on the stat sheet, but in reality, it may have benefited you more than anything else.
No, absolutely. But some of these mistakes, though, they really does have to stop. As I was watching video of, the Week 18 game in Miami, the throwing it at the goal line, at the 1-yard line as time is going out, and they can't even spike the ball. Just late game situations, which leads me to my next point.
That was the game where Dorsey got fired, right?
No, I'm talking about Week 18 that won us.
Week 18. I thought you said Week 8. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right before the half, have the ball with 10 seconds left, throws a slant short of the goal line, gets tackled at the 1, and time runs out at half. I believe the Bills were down 14-7 at that point, which leads me into what I believe is the biggest weakness that's holding back this team, which is the coaching staff. So we had so many games last year where we lost last second. Josh Allen left.
That's been what this team has been about the last 3 years, it feels
exactly. Especially last year was magnified because I believe Josh left the field 4 times for the final time, either tied or with the lead. End up losing the game, whether it's the defense allowing Mac Jones to look like Tom Brady, 12 men on the field. The Eagles game, being conservative by letting it go to overtime when you got timeouts. And not even right after the Eagles hit the 59-yard field goal in the rain. And just with, I believe there was 40 seconds left and just took a knee with 2 timeouts. And so
those are the type of things where it's like, I'm tired of people telling me that Josh Allen is the dude, but if you know he's the dude, why are you doing that? Give him the opportunity at least. Like there's always, and I know it's circumstantial and it's really tough to put that in a vacuum of an isolated incident where it doesn't happen very often. But if you think you got a top 3 quarterback, I have no idea why you're kneeling.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. McDermott's a good coach. I believe his winning percentage is in the 620s. But this tenure is screaming Andy Reid in Philadelphia. When he had McNabb going to all those championship games. Yes, I know the Bills have only been to 1. But the point is just not being able to win the big game, poor clock management, and having a star quarterback with McNabb. That is
I think that's actually a really good comp when you think about it. Because, I understand what you're saying because, the Eagles went to like 4 straight NFC championship games, and it was Andy Reid and McNabb, and we always thought that team just couldn't get it done. And we thought that Andy Reid was a choker of a coach, and so was McNabb. But then you get the GOAT, and then the whole narrative changes. But you're right. That's like, even though they haven't been to 4 straight or 5 straight AFC championship games, that feels like what the comp is, like having the quarterback and the coach and just falling short every year.
No, and then if you look at it, since 2020, you can make the argument that the Bills, regular season and postseason, has played the NFL game of the year all 4 years, and they've lost all
every
4.
One of them.
Although the Hail Murray game, you really can't really blame on coaching.
That was my God, that was the Arizona game.
Yeah, that was just
brutal.
That was just a great catch by Hopkins.
DeAndre is just stupid, man.
Yeah,
I feel bad for him too because he shouldn't have to finish out his career in Tennessee with that mayonnaise coffee drinking dude.
Right? Yeah, I really wish we went after him last year. I really did. But,
Hopkins?
Yeah.
It would have been a nice addition. It's something where like I don't even remember what the salary is that he signed with Tennessee, but it does come back to, man, if you had him with Diggs for a year, just like that rental agreement, basically, I think that would have been a really special combination. But like this, to get back on track of like the weaknesses and strengths and the whole Diggs thing is, do you think that this wide receiving core is really going to be good enough? Because I know that we've got like the Bill. I hate saying we. I know that people do it and fans do it, and I try not to because I'm not actually part of the team. But when it comes like Kincaid and Knox, right? They've got 2 really good wide receivers, or 2 tight ends, excuse me. And you look at Samuel, and Coleman looks like he's going to be that dude. But do you really think that they're going to be able, because the defense as well, like the entire secondary is decimated, like it's completely new secondary. Matt Milano's coming off an injury. I don't know if this defense is going to be good enough to it's not. Also for me, this defense has been overrated for years.
Exactly.
I don't know. This might be a 6, maybe 7 win team this year. I'll pull up their schedule later. But this might be a 7-win team, man. And I don't think I don't think I'm being too out of pocket on that.
No, you're not. But, a name that you did not mention there with wide receivers, who I think is key, is Khalil Shakir. I think he has potential to have a breakout year. Now that, he's most likely going to be thrusted as the number 1 wide receiver. And, and he could break out. Or worst case scenario, he ends up like an Isaiah McKenzie situation. I thought he was going to break out, but he never did.
And I feel like for me, like that's the reason why this particular season is really critical for not just even the wide receiving core, but for Josh Allen, is because I remember when Josh Allen was a rookie, what they tried to do was get short, fast guys who could create separation because they knew that he had accuracy issues. And then they realized, oh, this isn't what it's about. So they went and got Diggs, and they went and got guys like Kelvin Benjamin because they realized, why don't we get the guys with the bigger catch radius instead of short guys?
Tight end Kelvin Benjamin, that dude.
Yeah, the Good Burger dude, man. And it feels like Buffalo has had 42% of the Carolina roster on their roster since McDermott has come over. They're basically the Buffalo Panthers.
But this is about what I'm interested in, like for the offense too under Joe Brady. I'm interested to see what kind of motion he puts into play. Line up the receivers in different spots. You really didn't see a whole lot of that under Ken Dorsey's offense. Now under Brian Daboll's offense, you saw some pretty good
motion.
Yep. Especially in 2020. And when they were up in Denver to clinch that division, I was watching a little bit of that too. And some of those play calls in that game was just pure genius. And then Josh Allen throwing it into tight coverage where his receiver would be able to catch it. So
yeah, the thing that I'm really worried about though is because again, like I'm always worried about players playing out of position where like before they got Stephon Diggs, John Brown was their number one. Cole Beasley was their number two when he should be a slot receiver. And they had to like navigate things around. Like with the way that they're currently constructed, it feels like body type wise, they're better constructed where Keon Coleman should be your number one, right? And Shakir should be your opposite number two. And
or even
Samuel in the slot. Like it feels like they're better equipped now than they were Josh Allen's first 2 years. But the sample size of this offense in the continuity, and then just the youngness, like just the sheer age of Shakir and Coleman, it's gonna be interesting. What strength do you think that Buffalo has? Because we kind of talked a little bit about the deficiencies with the secondary and the youth of the wide receiving core. What do you think is an actual strength of this team, though?
Well, health permitting, defensive line and linebackers. That's going to be the key for our defense. If Milano can come back into form, because the first 4 weeks last year, he looked like he was going to run away with the Defense Player of the Year.
He was awesome.
And then if Von Miller can actually step on the field and contribute just a little bit, that helps our linebacking core as well. But
he was so bad last year, man.
He shouldn't have even been on the field last year, to be honest with you. But having DeQuan Jones come back this year is going to be a big key. If we can generate pressure and force the other quarterbacks into making those mistakes and allowing the defensive backs to get some turnovers, which I know you said there's a lot of change back there, a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
The big key for this defense will be to generating pressure and forcing mistakes.
Yeah, because you can. The way I've always looked at defense, or in general, when it comes to teams, is like if you're generationally, and it doesn't mean you have to be like a top 5 ever, but like you have to be ridiculously good either on one side of the ball or the other, or your position group has to just be bananas. So when I look at Buffalo right now, the secondary was a strength, and now it is absolutely their weakness. But they have a lot of depth on the D line. For me, if Greg Rousseau can become like the true pass rushing phenom that they were hoping that they were going to get, him, Ed Oliver, I think that, and I've thrown some slander at Ed Oliver a couple different times, because I feel like he's a slightly under for a D tackle and what you need him to do, because that run defense, to me, optically, it hasn't been as good as what people think it is. But if him and Greg Rousseau can really man up, that defensive line, and like you said, if Von Miller don't even give me Super Bowl MVP Von Miller, just give me something, bro.
More than 2 tackles.
Yeah, give me more than 2 tackles a season. That would be super great, man.
There's one thing that, even with all the injuries that was going down, one thing that was amazing about last year, especially during the last part of the season and into the playoffs in that Kansas City game, was people kept showing, like AJ Klein, who they brought off the street, and he played a fantastic game against Kansas City in the playoffs. The defense actually made stops against Mahomes. Just obviously could not make the play to either tie the game or take the lead. When you stop Mahomes 4 times in a row in the playoffs, you got to take advantage of it, and they just were not able to.
And see, that's what I've always been when it comes to the Bills and how they're constructed offensively is they put, once they got Diggs, to kind of reiterate, it was they wanted to just shove him down Buffalo's throat and the NFL's throat, like, we got the new dude. And instead of trying to play winning football, it was more of, see guys, we finally got it right. And it's largely ended in failure. Can sometimes be an over dramatic word, but the hyperbole of he's the next coming of is just too much. And he tries to play hero ball. There's always a mistake. He's throwing to square bodies. There's always something with him. And until this is the year, man. This is the year where we finally figure out, is Josh Allen the dude, or is he just another dude?
No, I believe he is capable of being that dude. He's just, sometimes his decision making is very, very questionable.
And I understand to a degree. Like, so when he was in Wyoming, it's one of those things where I feel like, generally speaking, the quarterbacks who come from the smaller colleges seem to do better in the NFL because they have no offensive weaponry around them. And then, like, you just didn't get offers going into college, right? And then you get to the NFL playing with people of your caliber, and then next thing you know, you're taking off. So even with the Bills, his rookie and second season, it seemed like he was playing with basically a college offensive roster because it was a broken Charles Clay and old LaShawn McCoy than nobody else. And once he had actual NFL players, it's like, oh, this guy can play. But what about when you don't have a top 5 wide receiver anymore? That's when we're going to really see.
Exactly. And that's going to be the biggest question mark, is the receiving core, how quickly they can gel. And because the AFC East, even with the Patriots not being
a cakewalk,
their and Miami's defense isn't the strongest, granted, but the Jets and the Patriots have 2 very strong defenses, which will keep them in a lot of games. And the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, if he comes back and plays well, who knows what they can bring to the table too, especially if Rodgers can hold up and score some points for the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's what people are. I think that most folks last year were overvaluing the Jets just because they got Aaron Rodgers. And I know this sounds like it's 2020 hindsight because he only played 4 snaps, but in reality, I don't think it's going to happen again. He's largely been pretty, like, bulletproof isn't the right word, but he's been durable his entire career, except for, like, he broke his collarbone, against Minnesota years and years ago. But overall, when you're 40 years old and you've really only missed total basically 2 seasons, your reliability is up there. So if there isn't that freak accident again, Aaron Rodgers can still spin it like anybody else in the league. So the Jets, to me, are not a cakewalk. The Dolphins, I don't agree with the contract they gave Tua, but offensively, they're going to be a nightmare still. And the Patriots, I don't have a whole lot of faith in them offensively, but defensively, they're still going to be there.
Yeah, defensively, they'll make some stops, and we'll see how their rookie quarterback does. But let's see if he can be an upgrade over Mac. It's kind of hard not to be an upgrade over him with how he played in New England.
Mac Jones, he was cheeks. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go take a break. Let's play some Bills. In about 30 seconds, we'll get to our NFL sleeper teams and overrated teams for the upcoming season.
Sounds good.
Now, with this being primarily a sports podcast, we understand that hydration and energy are both very important, not just for pro athletes, but for pro podcasters like your boy over here. That is why DUBBY.GG, that's right, Dubby, has linked up with Chop It Up a Peascott to give you a 10% off your online order using promo code Peascott. They've got swag bags and shakers, energy drinks and hydration supplements, and everything in between. My wife loves the pine berry splash flavor. I'm more of a watermelonada guy, but you really can't go wrong with either. They're rich in vitamins B6, 7, 12, vitamin C, and other vitamins and minerals to make you be the best version of yourself. Once again, visit www.dubby.gg. Use promo code PSCOT for 10% off your purchase. Y'all know the drill. Stay up, stay blessed. Let's get back into the episode. So every single year, we have some teams that overachieve and some teams that disappoint, whether it be due to injury, maybe they're healthy, but they just, they fall off the map. These things happen. So for me, one of the teams I feel like that is going to fall off the map more is Detroit. I don't really have a sleeper team really quite yet, but is there a team to you that you think is either A, going to fall way off the map, or B, is really going to overachieve based on what we saw over the last year or so?
I think Green Bay may have overachieved just a little bit last year. I have to see a little more out of Jordan Love. I still can't believe how much he got paid too, based off of one season. It really is insane.
8 games.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. But
yeah.
And the Eagles, they lost Jason Kelce, and once they hit 9-1, 10-1 last year, it seemed like they were a completely different team. Now I'm not sure they can get their swagger back that they had going back the previous season when they went all the way to the Super Bowl. But something was off with the Eagles last year, especially towards the end of the year, and I'm not sure if they'll turn that around quite so much. Because Dallas, the Cowboys, they have a lot to prove. This is Mike McCarthy's last year as coach, and Dak Prescott. I know they're notorious for underachieving. One of these years, with what they have, something's got to click. If CeeDee Lamb gets into camp.
You'd think so, and with how many people who they subscribe to the rule that the NFL is rigged, you'd think that Jerry Jones would get one more before he passes. Yeah. Right? Because of just all the hype and it's the feel-good story. You'd think that based on their success over the past 5 or 6 years, because the Cowboys have been good. If you can just put all your biases and all of your online social media hatred aside, the Cowboys have been good for a number of years.
I've put my bias towards them behind me a while ago. It's been 30, 31 years since we lost them in the Super Bowl. So I got no problems with the Cowboys. Now, a team that I think could overachieve or could do a little bit better because of one simple thing is the Chargers. I believe Jim Harbaugh is going to make a big difference with that team.
Ooh.
Based on, when prior everywhere he's gone, he may not have won quickly at Michigan.
No, but they win everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Stanford, he took a 1-win Stanford team, and I believe in
2 years, right?
Yeah. And then ended up winning 11 games. San Francisco, they were about ready to, call Alex Smith a bust. And that whole situation was not good. And then very quickly, first year, mind you, NFC Championship game.
13-3. Yeah, I was going to say 13-3 and went to an NFC Championship game.
Yep. And then a Super Bowl that he lost to his brother. So
God, that was the storyline on that was bonkers. That you could not have written a better storyline with that ever.
Nope. And add to the fact that I believe, wasn't that Ray Lewis's last game too? I want to say yes.
I believe that you're right. I believe you're right on that.
So the storyline on that Super Bowl was just everywhere, as you said.
That was the power outage game too, right? Yeah.
Ravens were up big, and then power outage. San Francisco came back. Ultimately, obviously, did not win, but I believe he's going to instill some discipline on that team.
See, and I try to think about this critically because I I hadn't thought about the Chargers kind of being my sleeper team just because I've seen this movie so many times beforehand. But there is a new coach in town, but it's also I look at the landscape of just the AFC where if you don't win your division, it is an absolute arms race to get into the playoffs. And unless something catastrophic happens to either Andy Reid, not his child, Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes, that's
Yeah.
that's still my pick for that division. And the rest of the, like, you look at Buffalo, whether you think it's Buffalo, Miami, or the Jets in the AFC East, doesn't matter. The AFC North doesn't matter. That entire division it won't make the playoffs because that's not going to happen. It can't physically happen. But there's any number of the AFC North that could make it. If you don't win the AFC West, I don't think that you can make it to the playoffs. And the Chargers they're in that boat for me.
And realistically, you could see any number of 11, maybe even 12 different AFC teams that can make the playoffs.
Like it's bananas, right?
Yeah.
Because you legitimately have the entire AFC North. That's 4 teams. You got 3 in the AFC East. That's 7 teams. The AFC South, to me, it's Houston, maybe Indy if Anthony Richardson is just super awesome. But yeah, you're right. Like there's 11, 12 teams.
They're due for a bounce back as well.
Who?
Jacksonville too.
Do you actually believe that though?
I'd like to believe that. Trevor Lawrence, this is, again, he got another quarterback who got a monstrous deal.
Stupid money. I think that's the thing for me is like the AFC South is one of those is the AFC South to me is the division where you only get to the playoffs because it's mandated. Yeah. Nobody takes you seriously. It doesn't matter who you are. Like you can be a good feel-good story, but nobody really cares about you.
Yeah, I think the exception now would be the Texans. If CJ Stroud doesn't have a sophomore slump, because they really came on strong last year, and in the first half of the game against Baltimore, again But as I've heard you say, you can't really base what you did in January as a springboard to next year, but based on what they did last year as well, though, and getting Diggs, they have the potential to win a couple. They have a potential to win a couple of games in the playoffs.
And I think that that's very fair because the way that I've looked at really everything, and I want to kind of springboard this into the quarterback salaries, and then I want to make sure that we get to baseball at the end is, to me. So I work in finance, right? Like I work in right now. It's in the auto industry, but beforehand I was actually underwriting and analyzing credit and things like that. So for me, when you have a new business, and I kind of get dubbed as like a younger Colin Cowherd because I try to make, life decision parallels between sports, but I look at it as if you're a new business or if you're a new quarterback or if you're a new team, whatever, I need to see at least 2 years bare minimum of what's going on. So like if I'm underwriting, if you're a new business, I need 2 years of taxes. So 2 full years, you got to be in business for more than 2 years. Same thing with this quarterback. I am not going to say that CJ Stroud is overrated. I'm not going to say that the Texans are overrated, but a 1-year sample size does not make anything. That's why every single year when people say, well, who do you pick in the AFC? I'm like, well, probably Kansas City, maybe Baltimore. I don't until it's either one of those 2 teams. I don't know why I would pick otherwise. Or it was New England when they had Brady, So until you show me at least 2 or 3 years of your tax returns, I don't know if I can fully believe in you. So when it comes to these quarterback salaries, that was kind of the pivot to one CJ Stroud, but also Jordan Love is sat behind Aaron Rodgers. If you didn't want Aaron Rodgers, you should have gotten rid of him, but you kept Jordan Love, and he was cheeks the first 7 weeks, balled out, and you're paying him. He's the highest paid quarterback at 26 years old and was awesome for 8 games.
It really is funny how history repeats itself too, because Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for what, 3 years, I believe it was.
I feel like it was
3 years a starter, I believe the Packers went 6-10, and then the Packers consistently got back to the playoffs. I just think it's funny that Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets from the Packers. I mean, what's next? Him going to the Vikings if it doesn't work out this year?
Oh my god! Oh my! If there is a football god, that will happen. That would be fantastic. Steve, you are an anarchist, and I love you for it.
Yeah. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, and they always do, man. That's the thing that's what bugs me the most about sports fans is everyone's saying, well, didn't you hear? Didn't you listen? This coach, this GM, whatever, this player said this. I'm like, how many lies do they have to tell you before you finally start to think for yourself? Like, we're always told by players, I want to finish my career here, or we're not trading this guy, we're not, whatever. And Aaron Rodgers kind of had that same feeling in Green Bay initially. I want to retire a Packer, and then he does his own ayahuasca thing, and he's doing his Jeopardy stuff, and I don't know, man. I feel like to get back on track, because my ADHD is wild, but to get back on at the Jordan Love thing is, do you believe in paying quarterbacks just because I'm frankly tired of seeing it?
Yeah, I believe I've been getting on the train that these athletes and these owners, mind you, get way too much money to begin with. But since with the revenue that's being generated, I'd rather see the money get into the players. That said, there's really only one quarterback who I believe should get $50 million a year, and he resides in Kansas City. I wasn't gonna do this, but we talked about this a little bit off air, and I'm really glad because you're so open minded that I not changed your mind, but you're like, yeah, it really is him. It's him, and there's nobody else. Because when I look at the landscape of quarterbacks, I can drop any other quarterback into any other position, and I have no idea if you're good or not. But I know you're good because Tyreek Hill was considered the best wide receiver, and you had the best tight end, and this was years ago. Yep. And
you went back-to-back Super Bowls without him.
Oh, Tyreek, yeah. Which I think was just remarkable to begin with. And even last year, them losing home field advantage, dropping down, what were they, the 4th seed, I believe? 3rd or 4th seed.
Yeah.
They had to win playoff games.
They didn't have the easiest route.
Yep. They had a very challenging route to the Super Bowl. Having to come here to Buffalo, which is not an easy place to play, and still beat us. Made that one additional play to beat us, then went to Baltimore and basically kicked their butts in Baltimore in the AFC title game.
So for me, like, I've always looked at this as like, we as a society want to put best quarterback with best statistical value, because fantasy football and gambling has kind of ruined the nuance when it comes to how we look at football. So for me, I saw you got rid of Tyreek Hill. Your offense didn't look the same, didn't look explosive. Patrick Mahomes wasn't throwing for 70,000 yards in a season and 4,000 touchdowns, but it made him a better quarterback, not having the dude who was basically Usain Bolt on the field, right? And so you got to see him really progress and be a better quarterback, even though they weren't as explosive. I'm always going to take the team that I know. If it's 3rd and 4, you know how to get 6 yards. Circumstantial football matters. And this is largely a goofy, fun podcast, but when it comes to how things are actually done, I'd rather have the team, and like you mentioned with the coaching with Buffalo, they always seem to fail in the circumstances and always falter. So yeah, I'm still going to take Kansas City versus the field. So if you had a hierarchy right now of NFL teams just in the AFC, it's obviously very early in injuries, and I'm not going to pin you to this, but like, what's kind of your top 5-ish of teams that you think are most likely to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl?
I mean, realistically, at this point, I can only really say Kansas City because they've done it before. Just looking at the other team's flaws. Miami. Yes, they're great offensively in 70-degree weather. But you play a physical team, they end up shrinking under pressure. Lamar Jackson, his playoff failures is, well documented.
It's pretty egregious. Yeah. When you think about the fact that he has two MVPs,
Which
his playoff record is egregious.
Which I have a huge issue with him getting 49 out of the 50 first place votes. I did not think
last year?
Yes.
Yeah, that
think he was
seemed a
runaway
little
MVP.
high. That seemed a little high.
Yeah, and Buffalo, you know the issues that are plaguing this team. I mean, the coaching and the inexperience at wide receiver. But we'll see how that plays out. I see people.
Quick question though: do you think the offensive line is actually good? Because I've been told for the last 5 years the O line is good, just because Josh Allen doesn't get sacked enough. When I know that he's breaking tackles, because I don't think the offensive line is actually any good.
I think they're average. I don't think they're great. I think they're average. Now, losing Mitch Morse is a big loss.
That's huge.
That was a cut I was not expecting. That was
salary cap wise, I get it, but you think that just for his experience and how good he is, but
yeah, and
they
got
to make up that money somehow with that Diggs trade, though.
Yeah, I still couldn't believe they ended up eating that much in dead cap money. That
my God, it was.
But back to what I was saying is, I hear people talking about the Jets, but honestly, let them make the playoffs first. Before you start talking the Jets, they still have the longest playoff drought of the 4 professional sports. Let's let them make the playoffs before we start hyping them up.
That goes back to the 2 years of taxes. Like I need to see something first. And I don't want to just, like we had talked about, if you don't win your division, there's no guarantee. Obviously, there's no guarantee that you'll make the playoffs. And the Jets are, to me, I've said this about the Giants and the Jets. You are those teams until you aren't those teams anymore. And what's wild is that Jets fans, the toxic ones on social media, like, well, Mark Sanchez, bro, y'all were dragging him through the mud, and now you're living in yesteryear about, well, he was good because he got the 2 AFC championships back to back. Dog, he was cheap, and you know it.
That Jet defense was phenomenal.
It was
Brian coached that team up pretty good. That's how they got to 2 AFC championship games.
Exactly.
Remember, the second year when they beat New England in the playoffs, when they went to New England that year in the regular season, they lost 45-3 on Monday Night Football. Then a month later, they go into Foxborough and somehow beat them.
Well, it's just such a, sports is a really fickle thing. It's not really just even sports specifically, but the fanhood, it's always like you and me growing up as Bills fans. When you're 5 through 10 years old, all you hear is, boy, I love losing Super Bowls. And once you get removed far enough, that sting goes away and people are like, oh, that was actually really impressive. You went to 4 straight Super Bowls as a team. That's crazy. And Mark Sanchez is now reaping those benefits because the Jets have been cheeks for so long that it's, well, maybe he wasn't that bad. No, he was still pretty terrible. That defense and run game was just absurd, though. But we get so far removed that we get back into the quarterback is the ultimate position and give them all the credit and none of the blame, or vice versa. And Mark Sanchez is the epitome of quite literally both of those polar opposites.
Absolutely. Now I didn't get to giving my prediction for a record for the Bills.
Yes, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked. What do you think? So did you have the actual schedule for them up, right?
I do not.
You do not. Okay, so I do. And let me go ahead and get, so week 1, Bills are at home against the Arizona Cardinals.
They should win that game.
Okay, so we got 1 win. Bills on the road at the Dolphins, September 12th.
I'm going to say that's a loss.
Okay, so we got 1-1. Jaguars at Bills, week 3.
Win.
Okay, 2-1. Bills at Ravens, September 29th.
Win, because Josh Allen seems to play a lot better on primetime. He's been a primetime player. I can see them going into Baltimore and winning that game.
Okay, so you got them at 3-1 right now. Bills at Texans, which I might go to, by the way. I've got a lot of friends in Houston on like the social media landscape that I've never met before, but I want to. But that is October 6th, Bills at Texans.
I see them losing that game.
Okay.
I see Diggs coming out and playing a big game against his former team.
Dude, I do too, especially because like it's not like Tre'Davious White's coming out of that locker room, man. Like I like Rasul Douglas enough, and Kyer Elam might be the guy who has to cover him too. Nah, Diggs is gonna cook both those boys. So we got at 3-2. Next, October 14th, Bills at Jets.
Bills win.
All right, so 4-2. Titans at Bills.
See, I see this as one of those games where they screw up.
You think they play down to their competition?
Yep. Because they're notorious for that.
They really are. So what we're at 4-3 now?
Yep.
All right. So now Bills at Seahawks.
Loss.
All right. So
that's a tough one to win at.
Yeah, it really is. They smoked the Seahawks the other year. It was like 2 years ago they played because my buddy's a Seahawks fan. He came over to the house and it was ugly because there was like 3 special teams touchdowns and he wanted to leave by like 10:30 Alaska time. So we're at 4-4 right now, I think, if I remember right. Dolphins at Bills, November 3rd.
When?
All right, 5-4. Bills at Colts.
When?
6-4. Chiefs at Bills.
I'm going to keep going with the trend of them beating them in the regular season. 7-4. I see this as their big win of the season.
So this is their Super Bowl, basically. They want to gear up for this. Okay. 7-4. Nen. Niners at Bills.
Loss.
7-5. Bills at Rams.
Loss.
Ooh. Yeah, that Nakua and
as I said, this team's just not as strong as it has been.
And you're getting into December.
These West Coast games are not the easiest. And this
is
really not the Bills team that went into LA and smoked them on opening night.
Right. So that I think that puts us at 7-6. 1, 2.
Same as last year.
4. Yeah. All right. So hey, look, we're gonna get all these games correct. All right. So we're at 7-6 right now. Bills at Lions, December 15th.
When? Says, as you've said, I see the Lions taking a step back. And I feel this is a game that the Bills can win. Hopefully it's not last-second field goal like it was on Thanksgiving 2 years ago. But.
It's so weird because I have been the person who has been downgrading the Lions because I still don't believe fully in Dan Campbell. I still don't fully believe in Jared Goff. I feel like this is a win for the Lions, but I want to go with your predictions for now.
And again, December is one in the past too, is when the Bills have played their best football as well.
That is okay. That is true. I'll give you that, but that gives us 8-6. Patriots at Bills.
When?
10-6. Wait, I must 9-6. I'm sorry. 9-6. I'm sorry. And then Jets at Bills.
I see that as a win too. I see them sweeping the Jets. As you can see, I'm not a big believer in the Jets.
Yeah, I'm kind of up and down. So, and then last game, Bills at Patriots.
I see that as a win. So I see
them going 11-6. 11-6. That's really optimistic. I just see some of these games like, even though I've talked so much smack about the Jaguars, I'm not confident on that game, the Texans game, the road Jets game, the Seahawks game, the Colts game, Chiefs, Niners, Rams. I don't know, man. I think this might be a 7 or 8 win team, and I hope you're right. I really do. People think I hate the Bills. I don't. It's just when I do my P. Scott's picks, I try to temper expectations of Bills fans of this is how I think that they could lose. I'm looking at it objectively. I'm not giving you my biased opinion. If I want to give you my biased opinion, I would just do a Bill.
In the end, even with the criticisms that we have with Josh Allen, he's still Josh Allen. He's still a top quarterback in the NFL.
Exactly.
And I just don't see this team finishing with the losing. especially with still how good the defensive line is, and how good Josh Allen is, and with how the running game emerged last season.
If they stick to it, though, is the problem. Do you stick to it?
They have to, especially when you're playing teams.
They better.
If they can do that, if they can establish a running game and not use Josh Allen so much running the football, open up the passing game this year, hopefully they'll be able to connect on more than one deep pass this year.
We would like to think
last year they only connected once, maybe twice on those deep throws. It didn't seem like it seemed like he never connected on those 50-yard bombs, not once the whole year.
No, and I think there's part of it, like Diggs is obviously a little bit older. He doesn't really have the same speed, but I understand the frustration that people have with that connection. Was like Diggs was force fed, but had he not had Diggs, and again, this is the whole reason why this is the year for Allen, is had he not had Diggs and had the security blanket that he knew he had one of the best wide receivers, would he be able to have the confidence now to be able to spread the ball around to lesser talent, if you will? So it's going to be fun to watch. We didn't really talk too much about the quarterback salaries, but you also told me you only had about an hour of availability. So baseball, I want to make sure that we don't gloss over this. You are a huge Mets fan.
Yes. And then I kept telling myself that throughout the first couple of months, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into it. And all of a sudden, Grimace throws out the first pitch, the McDonald's. Ever since then, they have been on an unbelievable tear, although they are losing 90-0 today.
So I'm not a huge baseball fan anymore. I used to be a huge baseball fan, and then I just kind of fell off the map. So where were the Mets this year at like their lowest, and then where are they currently? Because I remember the Grimace story. So what was their low point? What's their high point?
Well, they're about to be 55-50. They spent most of the first half of the season, 5 to 10 under 500. So they went on a nice low run. Now the opposite was the Yankees. The Yankees, they started off 50-22. They spent most of
Holy
the
hell, are you serious?
They spent most of the first couple of months without their ace pitcher, Garrett Cole, and they still went 50-22. But they've been, over the last month and a half, they've been in a complete free fall. They're not in first place, but they're at 61-45. So they've gone 9-23 over the last. But they did just complete a trade.
You got Jazz Chisenhall, right?
Yep. And then some other big stories is Pitt and the Pirates. The Pirates, they started off strong. They're still in the playoff race. They're 52-52. They got a young stud named Paul.
Dude, Paul Skeens is
I believe it was the first Pirate pitcher to start an All-Star game. I'm actually driving down to Pittsburgh next weekend to go see them play the Diamondbacks. It's only about a 3.5, 4-hour drive from me. I hope he's pitching because I would love to see him pitch.
Oh my god, yeah. So like that was like I bought tickets to get to the AFC Championship game. This is now your AFC Championship game because now you get to watch. Skeens is how it's pronounced, right?
Yes,
Paul Skeens. So yeah, I haven't watched again. I used to love watching baseball, but with my work schedule and just the time differences, I'm never there. And honestly, if I'm being like full disclosure, it doesn't really hit me as the same way that it used to. But I see how nasty this dude is. He seems like, and I don't want to be hyperbolic and say he's going to be like the next GOAT, but from what I've seen so far, I don't know how he's not going to be in the conversation, at least.
Arm injuries, if he doesn't learn how to pitch. Because there's been a lot of arm trouble in baseball this year due to starting pitchers on every single pitch throwing max velo and spin rate. A lot of people are blaming the pitch clock. I'm not. I think it's mechanics. You got to get back to learning how to pitch like Greg Maddux used to do. He would paint the corners. That's how he was successful. Everybody wants to throw 100 and 102 miles per hour. And throwing a baseball is that hard is not sustainable. It's actually probably the worst thing you can do for your arm is throwing breaking balls.
See, and it's weird because like as somebody who doesn't claim to be a baseball expert, I can already tell you that I feel that in my soul. I went bowling yesterday for the first time in 13 years, and my elbow and my ring or my fingers and my wrist already hurt like hell because I bowled 3 games like an hour. But again, like the pitch clock, I feel like for most people it's an excuse, but you're right. Like you want to just throw a bajillion miles an hour, and that isn't how your arm is supposed to. I think there's a balance where you don't have to throw 84 like Maddox did, but you don't have to be a Roldis Chapman either and throw 140, you know?
And then when it goes to teams, I'll give you one team that's not going to make you fall in love with baseball. Try watching a Chicago White Sox game. They are 27-80. No lie.
Oh.
They have been outscored by 215 runs, and they are currently on their third 10-plus losing streak of the season. And you know what? You know it's funny. A month and a half ago, I went on a cross-country road trip. I went to a few ballparks. Seattle was one of them. You know, they ended up losing on a walk-off grand slam when I was there. I tell you one thing, that was awesome because I like watching the Mariners, but the White Sox, they are starting to getting in danger of breaking the 62 Mets 120 losses in a season.
I can't imagine. You said they're what 27-86?
27-80.
27-80.
So they have to go. They have to win 16 more games, which I'm not sure they can do.
That's abysmal, dude.
The worst thing we've seen.
So the 62 Mets have the worst record in Major League Baseball history.
Losses in the modern era.
For losses. They have the worst record ever.
40, 42, and 120. The 2003 Tigers. I remember this team vividly. Remember, they started the year 0-9, 1-17, and then 2-25. They won 43 games that year. The kicker is they won 5 of their last 6 games to end the year to avoid the loss record. You talk about sports being funny. Baseball's one of them. You just never know what you're going to see. And that's why I love the game.
I was hoping that would have been a New York team and not a Detroit team, because that would have been the epitome of finishing strong every year and thinking you have the quarterback. Because every year when the Giants with Daniel Jones, the Jets with Sam Darnold, it didn't matter. When Zach Wilson, the last 4 games of every season, they're like, maybe we got somebody because we went 2-2 or we went 3-1 when the games don't matter. I wish that wasn't the Tigers, and I wish it was like a Mets team, because that would have been just fantastic.
Obviously, I don't, but
no, right? No, that duly noted. I don't want to aggravate the guest.
No, you're good.
But no, man. So, did you have anything else you want to throw? I know that we're right at the brink of your availability, so I don't want to keep you any longer than you had available to you.
No, I was happy to do this, and I'd be happy to do this again.
Yeah, man, you were great. I really appreciate you taking the time. Whenever I have anybody on here, it's always more enjoyable, mostly because like doing this job by yourself is difficult. I don't think that anybody really understands. If you're not doing it by yourself, you don't understand how difficult it is to create content and talk to yourself for however long you're doing it. So having somebody else with you makes it more enjoyable. Steve, you were great, man. And I wish I was more, knowledgeable about baseball, because I used to love it so much. And I just...
Well, maybe we should do this once the playoffs roll around.
You know what? I think that that's a great idea. And what we can do, since we know where you think the wins and losses are, we can meet up during the season and see how you stack up versus where the Bills actually are.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
That'll be fun.
But yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do this anytime. I'm just not very knowledgeable, basketball, because I don't really watch that. But football is part of my thing.
Everybody has a lane. Everybody has something that they're passionate about. And I'm passionate about the fact that you're passionate about the Bills. And I really appreciate you taking the time for us to be able to chop it up with Peace God. That was Steve Mumma. Thank you so much for your time talking Bills. We're going to have JD's and Tony Burton on Tuesday to talk the Eagles and Washington football team, or Commanders, or whatever the hell they're called now. That's going to be fun having an NFC clash on that one. Steve, thank you so much for your time. As you guys know, stay up, stay blessed, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.